Hey guys, my name is Eren. I started a company called Udemy. Just to kind of get a sense, who in the audience knows what Udemy is? Okay, cool. So most of you guys know it's a marketplace for online startups. Sorry, it's a marketplace for online courses. And the funny thing is, like, now you know Udemy, so I'm not going to explain what it is that much in detail, but so in the early days of Udemy, it was very hard for us to pitch. We would always say, we democratize education by doing this. Like, we would always have a super kind of fancy, complicated pitch. As you get more and more successful, your pitch usually gets simpler. Like, it is a marketplace for online courses. That's kind of the best definition. Okay, can you guys hear better? All right. So I will tell the story of Udemy a little bit, so it gives context. I studied computer science in Ankara and mathematics. And I and my co-founders, we were in Turkey around 2007. And we decided to start a company which would be a platform for anybody who wants to teach online. And the real inspiration comes from my personal background. So very quickly, just like 30-second version, I was born in a village school in southeast part of Turkey. So just my primary school was like one room, one teacher who would rotate between different grades. And like 80% of the time, so you would have no teacher, so you are supposed to learn by yourself. But to my like later, I was really good at mathematics, but there was really nowhere to go. But later on in my life, like, so my sister was going to college, so my parents had to buy a computer for her. And I started finding math websites, forums, and IRC channels where people were discussing tough mathematical problems. And I started self-teaching myself mathematics. And long story short, I ended up winning a gold medal in Turkey's national math Olympiads and a silver medal in international math Olympiads, which was like a big success story because, not because it's particularly important, but because I was able to do it like almost completely by self-teaching myself over using internet. So that was kind of the early inspiration. So you could use internet as your primary learning destination, and that was actually creating a playfield that didn't exist before. So, but later on in my life, like, so I always thought about that idea, like that was really internal to me. Even in college, I pretty much didn't go to any school. So I think if you collect all the hours I attended school, it should be like 50 or 60 hours total throughout the 4 years. Because internet was good enough to learn anything you want to learn. So anyway, we started the company for the first time. And it was last year in the college. I started with my co-founder, Oktay. Our first company wasn't an education company, so I was really kind of excited about the graphic programming and 3D engines, so we built a 3D simulation company in the last year of the college. It was fun. It was kind of technically challenging subject. It was just not like a fun business. We did it for a little while, but we realized like working for the construction companies for 3D simulations wasn't a fun thing to do. So, and later on we like had some other projects, and one of them was an education project, and that really kind of triggered my real passion. Because I always, as I said, I thought like internet could be people's primary learning place. Why don't we build a company around it? So initially we were building a software which was going to be a live education tool. So we worked with Matthew's R&D center. We built the software for them. We got some money from them. It was like a small amount of money, but later on, like our real kind of passion started because we said, okay, what if we take all of this software we built, which was like $50,000 per license, and we made them completely free and gave it to anybody on the internet who wanted to teach something. So we actually didn't know the market. We had no idea. I have presentations from my early days of the company. It's kind of really funny. I could actually show this, and we could make fun of it together. But it was a very naive idea. Like, why wouldn't we give it to everybody? And more people could teach, and that would be more value for the world. So we started the company. We built a product for a year, stuffed it with a lot of advanced features. So even if before we launched the product, it had a third-party development environment, an API, and like all the kind of fancy, technically hard stuff. But like we launched the product, and 2 weeks later, it was very clear that that wouldn't work. So there were 3 main problems. One is like the infrastructure, video streaming. It was still not good enough. It was very expensive, and like still it would take 10 minutes for people to like set up their microphone and cameras to learn live. Second was like Turkey wasn't the right place to do that. So like by the time we launched it, we were getting a little bit more technical savvy because to fund the company, what I was doing was I was working at night for Silicon Valley companies, like for like 10 hours at night. I would get paid a good like full-time salary. Then I would actually distribute that salary to like 5 people in the office. So during the day, I would work with our normal team to build Udemy. So while doing it, we got like kind of savvy about like how businesses work. And one thing we realized was, if you want to start a marketplace, you have to start in the place where you're the highest density of the influential users. So this is true for Twitter, LinkedIn, or like Quora. It was true for Udemy too. We had to be in the place where most of the influential teachers were located. So that would be Silicon Valley. So we realized Turkey wasn't the right place to start that company. And the third was like live was the wrong modality, because when you have a network business, usually there's a huge chicken and egg problem. If you don't have any instructors, why would students come? If you don't have any students, why would instructors come teach on your site? And doing this live was actually making it significantly like even harder. So that's the reason like there hasn't been any live education marketplace. Like all of the trials have failed, including Google Help Us, which is another fail. So we realized that wasn't the right model. So we had to shut down the company here. I moved over to Silicon Valley, and we lost 340. Like I joined a startup called SpeedDate as they're one of the first employees. So we learned about growth and how to acquire users, and kind of a little bit about how Silicon Valley companies worked. And 4 years after SpeedDate, like SpeedDate was doing pretty well, but I was still passionate about Udemy, so we decided to really try Udemy. And my co-founder had come to US, San Francisco already, and we brought a lot of our old engineers to San Francisco, to Silicon Valley. And we started reworking, like we rebuilt Udemy from ground up to be an on-demand learning platform. And initially, like we were trying to raise money, because if you could raise money, then we could go full-time on Udemy. Otherwise, we were limited by the visa stuff in the United States. So we built the product again. We tried to raise money. We got maybe like 60 investors turning us down. So we said, okay, maybe we have to build the product. So we built the product, launched it. We tried to raise money again. Again, a lot of no's, like so. And you just like imagine that moment. So like we did try this in Turkey, we shut it down, we gave up once. Like 3-4 years passed, and like finally we got the motivation to start again, and then still all these smart entrepreneurs who had already started billion-dollar companies, like, or investors who have backed amazing companies, they all said like, oh, this is not gonna work, right? And they were pretty like smart criticism. The most important criticism was content would eventually be free everywhere, because the theory goes that like as a system becomes more efficient, the cost of a product comes closer to the cost of production. And if you are delivering online content, the cost of delivery is pretty much like zero. Cost of production gets close to zero as your scale goes up. So these very super smart people were saying content would become free, like nobody would ever pay for digital content. But anyway, like we heard that, but we like kept going. We thought that could be the case. So maybe we were saying maybe we could become a free education platform and we could get some advertising revenues. But then the criticism was like learning will never have that much traffic, so that advertising becomes a viable market. So yeah, like the odds were kind of against us. But eventually we launched the product. We got some traction early on. It was all like dummy traction. It wasn't real traction. It was just that we crawled a bunch of open courseware websites, put it up on Udemy, so Udemy looked like a site which had some courses. And we got some like SEO traffic and like some PR traffic, just to like fake some usage. But like we had some users, like they knew that wasn't original Udemy content, but we made the experience of taking a course better than the open courseware websites. So it was still like useful for some people. So eventually we raised money. I think we got our first angel funding because from Keith Rebua, which is one of the top Silicon Valley angel investors. He said, like it was I think our third conversation with him. Like each time he had enjoyed our product, he liked the fact that we were really passionate about it, but he had very smart criticism about why this wouldn't work. And the final times he said, you know what, like just fuck it, I'm just putting 50K. This is not gonna work, but like I'm guessing you'll like make the right pivot, and you may be able to find the right model. And he had just like 3 of his companies had just like liquidated, so he had got a lot of money. So it was kind of lucky time And then like once you get your first investors, it's usually very easy to close a like full round. So we like raised $1 million pretty quickly once there was one investor. So going from 0 to 1 is like very, very hard if you're raising angel investment. 1 to like N is pretty easy. We could talk about the psychology of why that is later. Anyway, so we got $1 million funding, and we were able to go full time. We started getting some like real traction, some real use case. Like the traffic was always pretty small. Even like right now, Udemy, like we are worth like 9-digit like numbers, but still like the traffic is not like a Snapchat traffic, right? It's relatively small, but there's some real use case of people like taking courses, changing their lives, finding jobs. Like so, we have created a new job which is like teaching online. So there are really like important values. So our value is pretty high. Anyway, so we raised $1 million the first year. 1 year after that, we raised $3 million of Series A. And then 1 year later, it was $12 million. And like around the beginning of last year, we raised another $32 million. So the total money raised is $48 million today. We have 4 million students, 25% of them are paying for courses. So to the surprise of most of our early investors, people are like indeed paying for content. And our insight was that like people weren't paying for motivational bullshit content like this one, right? So this is like bullshit motivational content. This is meant to be freely available. But if you give them like really technical advice, like our first paid course was called Raising Money for Startups. I could still like suggest you to buy it from Udemy. It's $19. So it was, okay, this is the pitch deck you send. This is the intro email. This is like how you close the legal. So it was really technical. So our kind of big insight was that people were indeed paying for technical content. And technical content wasn't fun to produce. So you still have a kind of exclusive access to content that other people weren't just doing for free. So, but eventually, right now, as I said, like we have $48 million funding, roughly 15,000 instructors have courses on the website. Some of our instructors made more than $1 million. Like, I think our top instructors made $5 million so far. But there are other instructors who are making like $300,000-400,000 grand per year. And every month we are sending 6,000 checks, meaning like 6,000 people are making some income from Udemy every month. I think this is one thing I'm proud of. We created a job which didn't exist before. Teaching online like is a kind of freelance job right now. Like I think like because of Udemy. So those are like, as I said, now the company is going well, but I want to kind of talk about more like early days. And I know a lot of you guys are going to pitch ideas, so I want to kind of give a few kind of technical advice there. So, and I want to focus on like things that are very like counterintuitive mistakes, like just mistakes that I'm guessing 70% of the audience is like doing today. So, first of all, like one thing you have to realize, most of the successful companies, like when they're in the early stage, they weren't the best pitchers. They weren't the best fundraisers. So being a very good fundraiser and being a good startup like founder doesn't necessarily like equate to the same thing. Like if you are a good business person, like good salesperson, you are expected to be good at pitching. But if you are two engineers, people expect you to be like average at pitching. So like don't try to be perfect about everything. And most of the successful companies like are not successful because they are amazing about everything around creating startups. They are usually amazing about one thing, and they're like pretty bad at it. They like suck at a lot of other things, and that doesn't matter because like eventually you become successful. So and investors, especially good investors, are like looking for that. They're not looking for this guy is like a well-rounded person on like everything about starting a company. That's not what they're looking for. They're looking for just like kind of just this one like interesting thing about you that will make you successful while everybody else is failing. And all this advice I'm going to give, just so you guys like understand, is advice for good investors. So there are a lot of bad investors. When you like pitch them, they will like ask bad questions. They will like give you like bad critics. Like this is true. Just like know that. Like not every feedback you get from investors is true. Even if it's the best investor in the world, like it's still there's a good chance that it's not going to be true. So you should realize like I'm really focusing on like the best investor who kind of will pick the right thing. So first of all, what investors are looking for is not that you are very likely to be successful. It's not what they're looking for. What they're looking for is most likely you will not be successful. But if you become successful, that's going to be a massive company. That's what they're looking for. This is counterintuitive, but like don't try to like close all the holes. Like if you were pitching Uber, I could bring out like 50 reasons why Uber would fail, but that's not like what investors care. Investors care about like, okay, if somehow you close all those like 50 holes, could this become a like $10 billion company? And Uber is that, right? Like most people thought this was a terrible idea. Few investors thought it was probably a terrible idea. But if not, it would be like multi-billion dollar idea. This is what investors are looking for. And what they want to see is an opportunity. So I think that the traditional pitch advice is like, start with the right problem, like right solution, like they're kind of like structurally correct. But what you want the investors to see is that like there's an opportunity here, like they will make money because now they saw something that other people probably will not see. So like an opportunity is really interesting because most of the like boring startup pitches like still have a pretty solid problem that they're trying to solve. They have a relatively like reasonable solution idea. It's just not interesting. So the opportunity is something like this. Like maybe this thing wasn't possible before, and like because of the recent trends in technology, all of a sudden it became possible. Or maybe like there is something that most people are not seeing. So when I was pitching, for example, my big kind of edge was like I was saying the problem in education is an access problem. It's not a quality problem. Everybody was focusing on creating this super adaptive, like fancy, awesome learning environments which were super hard to build. So they were only targeting a very small audience. I was saying, you know what, like majority of the people in the world like, don't have access to pretty much anything for learning. So let's just like make a scalable environment so we could distribute a lot of different courses relatively easily to the right audience. So we didn't over care about the platform to teach. We care about like, okay, making this a sustainable thing around the world. And my personal side was coming from like Turkey, like seeing like a different part of the coin that investors were not seeing, because 100% of the investors in Silicon Valley are coming from elite universities. They're coming from usually wealthy backgrounds. So I was able to say like, you guys now like you are seeing only like 0.1% of the world. Like I saw the other 99%. So like another thing could be like maybe this was possible on web, but now like if you move to mobile, there's an interesting thing. Maybe you have this like super unique insight that other people are ignoring. Maybe this is a really boring business, and you could even say like this is an amazing business, which is so boring that no entrepreneur is tackling it. And I'm not gonna just like take the hard work, tackle it, and become successful. You know what? Like this pitch really works out, by the way. Like amazing pitch. Like Stripe, the payments company, like nobody was tackling the boring payment problem. And I just saw a company like 3 days ago. They are like putting teachers who are not working, like substitute teachers. They made a platform to better place substitute teachers when there's room. So if a teacher has to go for like a 10-day vacation, they need to find a substitute teacher. There are a lot of substitute teachers. Like they made a platform which makes that process more efficient. They are making like 100 million revenue right now from like 3 years, from 0 to 100 million. Like it's so boring. Like I had never heard about anybody who's tackling something even remotely close to this thing. These guys are tackling it. They put all the like 2 years of work to do this. Like they went through the boring sales process and they became successful. So this is the thing. Like the investors want to see something that's kind of different about the situation. So it's like there's a gold mine there that most people are missing. That's what they want to feel. And they want to feel like if they miss your product, like company, like you will still become successful and they will just miss it. Right? That's what they want to get. So what they don't want to get is like, if I put money, they may become successful. This is opposite of what they want to get. Like, and this is what most investors are looking for, saying, oh, we are not very successful yet because we don't have enough money. So if you give us money, like we may become successful. That's not what they are trying to write here. So again, like a few more kind of very obvious mistakes. One about like business models. Usually they don't matter that much. The only time when it matters is if your business needs profitable paid acquisition for growing, then business models are important. And one mistake that most people are doing is like having 5 different business models, like saying I'm gonna, like if it's Udemy, like we are gonna sell paid courses, we are also gonna do advertising, and we are gonna do some lead generation, and we will have like a premium company product which we will sell for. So that's usually like sounds terrible, especially in the early days. You should have just like one business model. For us, it was like we are gonna sell courses. And our competitors that you probably know, like Coursera, Udemy, They all wanted to come up with this like super smart, intelligent business models like, oh, people are going to take courses, and some of them will be amazing. Then we'll be actually helping companies to hire from people, like from best students, and they will give us a referral fee. I mean, they were thinking this was a super smart business model, and even some investors bought this. But it's terrible. Like, if your business model takes like 10 minutes to describe, like, it's a terrible business model. Most business models are super straight. Like, I give you something, I give you Apple, you give me money. So this is like the most basic one. Maybe it could be 2 steps. Maybe like, I'm letting somebody else sell Apple and I'm taking a cut from it. But the more complicated it is, like, the less likely it's going to work. And like ideally, there should be one stupid business model. So don't complicate it. Just find a lot of creativity in your main business, but not in how you make money. So another kind of just small detail, like relative numbers matter more than absolute numbers. How many users you have, how much traffic you get is like not very interesting. What's more interesting is like how much are you growing week over week. So if you are in a very early like pre-funding stage, you should be growing at least 10% per week, right? Otherwise, it's like your growth is like way too small to be really important. So things like how much money are you making per user, how much are you making money, how much money are you making per active user? Like these kind of relative numbers are a lot more interesting because they usually cause kind of smart insights. Like one thing we were pitching early days was we were making $5 per MAU. Like every time like somebody's active in a day, we make $5. And the same number, if you can look at for Zynga, was like kind of like around 300 times less than us. The nice thing with this kind of relative numbers is like you can compare a large company with a small company and create some like interesting insights. You could say like what we have is so different that we are making like 10 times more money than Google around this particular use case. That might be kind of an opportunity that the investor wants to see. And the other thing you should realize is like a lot of business development deals, contracts, those things usually don't work, especially when you are small. You should really care about like 2 things. So you should spend your time on absolutely 2 things. While going from idea to product, building your product, building an amazing product, and talking to your customers. Everything else, like you have to kind of cut it off. Like going to this event, like other stuff, reading investment books, just cut it off, try to like build an amazing product. Everything else will become a waste of time. And when you are raising money, then you have to raise money for a while. But then you turn on fundraising, ideally you finish it, and then you just turn it off and go back to talking to users and building products. One thing about like building products is I have been doing the talk at home in the last 4 years, I think once every year. So I had the same like quote, like if you are not embarrassed from your first product, you launched it too late. That's kind of changing a little bit. The expectation from the first product has dramatically increased in the last few years. Because a lot of like even early stage like 2-people companies have decent looking products. Design has been a lot easier than it was before. Deploying is easier. And like there's a lot of kind of focus on minimalism. So people learn that they have to start with a very minimal product, which is supposed to work better. So the bar has gone up. Like so right now, even if you are early stage pre-funding, people are looking for a polished product, unfortunately. Like this is somewhat unfortunate. They're not looking for a stuffed product, which all the features and like bells and whistles, they are not looking for, but they're looking for an elegant solution to the core problem. As I said, this is just a matter of barrier going up. Your competitors are doing a good job, so you have to kind of catch up with that. Another thing which is specifically important for this audience, low competition in a small market doesn't pitch well. Meaning, like a lot of people say, okay, US has a huge market, it's super competitive, but this is a small place, there are not a lot of competitors, we'll actually become the winner we'll become the big fish in this small bucket. That doesn't usually work. You still want a large bucket, right? So, because one thing that you cannot easily change, and which is really important, is the total addressable market. Like, if everything works perfectly, and if you keep expanding your product, how much can you expand? And total addressable market is not market size. Market size is, in your current business line, how much money can you make? Total addressable market is kind of like the parent of that, right? For us, like that's education, or online education, let's say, right? Because you'll never do physical. But anything in online education you can consider as total addressable market. So even if our casual education market wasn't large enough, we could always pivot into corporate education where there was a lot more money. So it was like in our total list, but at least like education, online education was large enough market. If you have a pretty like tight kind of boundary around what you could do, and that boundary is pretty small, that's going to be a problem. And it's especially important for countries like Turkey, where a lot of the businesses have very small market sizes, like total addressable markets. So it usually is not like large enough to create a business. Ideally, you pick a market which is already larger. So if you take a company which is, let's say you take a $100 million company in the United States and think about, okay, I'm going to do something like this in Turkey, that's probably going to be a too small market. You have to, like, even if you are going to build a company which is comparable to a Silicon Valley company, pick one that's at least like worth $1 billion. Anything smaller than that is going to, like, even Udemy in Turkish will be too small, like, because even for Udemy, our like #1 problem, we had a board meeting 3 days ago. Still, the #1 problem is like how large is casual education market? Like we think it's maybe like $5–6 billion. It's actually not that big. If this was $100 billion, I wouldn't be worried. But that's still something I'm worried about. So if you do like it in Turkey, it's going to be just way too small. Yeah, I think these are some of the kind of most kind of common mistakes I see there. I had more notes, but let's switch to the Q&A mode. I think there's going to be more interesting conversation. Yes.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Val. Thank you for the presentation. In the beginning of your speech, you were talking about your very early stage when you had no real traction.
Yep.
And my question is, how did you get an investor who believed in you to take a risk in that very early stage? And then the challenge of, or the easiness of raising the first $1 million after that?
Yeah. So that's a good question, by the way. So what investors want to see like is progress. Because for them, the progress is the best indicator, like the progress before fundraising is the best indicator of the potential progress after fundraising, right? So they will simply think, whatever you are able to do right now, if you raise $300,000, maybe you can do like 3 times more than this. Like, but as I said, like the kind of pre-funding progress is the most important, and the progress that like you are supposed to have differs by the market. If you're in a market which is a super high market risk but low technology risk, like another photo application, right? That's kind of the most popular example. If you're making another like kind of social photo sharing application, the technology is not very high. Most people can do it, but the market risk is super high. So they will expect some traction, some interesting numbers. Otherwise, you already can build a product that's not very interesting. But if you're in a market which is a higher technology risk, then the progress, like you may not even have a live product, you may not have even any users, but if you show some signs of being able to do that, that might be good enough. If you are like doing a cancer research company, then obviously they're not going to expect you to have like 5 patients cured completely. They are going to expect from like some signs of interesting research. That would be like more than enough. So in our case, like I think like our investors didn't think like market risk was that high. They thought the like biggest risk was the monetization risk, like nobody would pay for this content. And the other big like risk they were seeing was like people wouldn't be like spending time in these courses, like on taking online courses. So even if we didn't have a lot of traction, we had the OpenCourseWare courses, and we had a lot of interesting data about like how much people consume those courses. It wasn't very high, but even the fact that we had data about how people learn was actually very interesting to them, because no other company had scalable data about learning before. So that kind of component was kind of like very interesting for them. So they put money, the first investors put money on that. And the second reason, the main reason he put the money is, as I said, we talked to them 3 times in like kind of 3–4 months intervals. And each time we came back, like we were significantly better. And we weren't even full-time. We had a full data, like we had a full like heavy daytime job, and we were working at nights. But still, every 2 months he met us. Like we had developed a lot of things. We had actually solved some of the problems. We had more data. So I think like he was primarily impressed from the progress we were making, like without money. And just one key thing here is, if they only look at your current product, they probably won't understand how well you are progressing. But if they see like 2-month intervals, like then they actually see like how much better you got. Yeah. Sure.
Actually solve the marketplace issue. You said that you needed students in order to attract teachers, and you needed teachers in order to attract
Yes, so that's like a big area. So I think I have 2 full videos on YouTube about, I made like one full, like 1 hour speech about how to solve the early traction problem at marketplaces. If you can like search on YouTube, like, it was in a Singapore conference, and there are a bunch of articles that kind of transcribed it. I have a like full answer there. This is too short to give the answer. And by the way, just so you know, like we tried a lot of things which failed. We tried other stuff which worked. So there are a lot of things you can try. And I was actually asking this to everybody. So and all the like other entrepreneurs to get ideas from them. We tested several of them, and some of them worked. This is kind of a quick answer, but I have a like more detailed kind of tactics that you can apply for.
I'm actually interested in your story because I have quite a lot. I have started that.
I mean, just like 3-4 things which worked. We couldn't get any people to create paid courses, so instead we organized events, and each event was like around a particular subject. The first event was called Raising Money for Startups. So, and we gave each speaker a particular subject they were supposed to talk about, and then we kind of videotaped it and like edited those videos to make a course. This was how we created the first 3 paid courses. Then we started kind of promoting that course in a newsletter, and we kind of played the middleman between a bunch of newsletters and group the daily deals. So yeah, it's always forcing. So we kind of like went back and forth in between them. That kind of brought us more traction. But then there were like other stuff like over the time which worked. Just one kind of quick thing you should realize, like for any startup, the growth methodology in the early days and the growth in like later stage is completely different. So if you don't have your first 100,000 users or like something like that, it's going to be a very different thing than like your late stage growth tactics. So don't try to like focus on like scalable big things in the early days. You have to figure out like how can I get my cousin to use your product and this particular guy to use the product. So it changed a lot. So sorry, I had.
Hi, my name is Giray. Thank you for the speech. I want to ask you how and when. Sorry if I missed that. How and when exactly you made the decision to go to San Francisco, and could you tell us about the process of moving the company? Like, did you get an invitation from an investor or kind of go with an accelerator or something?
Yeah.
And also, what are the main differences between here and there?
Yeah, so is this being recorded anywhere? Sorry. Okay, so I mean, our like the way we had to go to San Francisco is pretty straightforward. I think at the time we were starting, a lot of the people had already graduated in the team, and they were kind of postponing the military service by considering like just getting all these like medical reports and stuff. So that's why this is the part where I'm not sure whether I should say or not. But so they changed the law, so all of our team had to go to military service in like 2 weeks. So like all of a sudden we kind of lost everybody, my co-founder and all of our engineers, and I had like 10 days to leave the country. So I just like took a flight, went there. But I was already working at NICE for Silicon Valley company, so it wasn't hard for me to switch over full time. So simply like I was kind of a consultant, remote developer for Speeded. I became full time. So what you say like in investor sending an invitation, that's science fiction. Like I mean the first investor that kind of took me serious after I moved was like 4 years after I moved to Silicon Valley. So
how many investors rejected Udemy?
Yeah, I mean probably like totally around 100, like 60, 70 like in the first round and kind of 20, 30 in the kind of later rounds.
And you pitched 100 investors, although you have been rejected previously.
Yeah, I mean until we raised the first round, it was like 60 to 70, something like that. Yeah, so we like just kept pitching it. I mean the easiest way to do this is like investor says no, he's like an idiot. So just like switch to the next person. So that's the way kind of you like keep forward. I mean, in reality, like a lot of things that they say will be like correct. Like, I mean, like a lot of things we were saying was kind of wrong, and they were right about certain criticism. But in reality, like they just like didn't matter. Like we started doing the business, and like 2 weeks after we started getting actual paid customers, we realized, okay, like what this investor was saying was right, but we just like changed it over time. So you don't have to be perfect in the beginning. That's kind of the key thing. You just need to like to kind of be right enough about the kind of initial hypothesis. That's good enough. Everything else, like you will say wrong things, investors will catch them and not invest in you. Like so, if an investor doesn't want to invest in you, he can always make like reasons about like pretty good arguments about why your idea won't work. And if an investor does want to invest in you, then they make very good arguments about like why it will work. And these two are actually true in the same time. There was one more question you had asked. I kind of like skipped that. So you said how I went there. So as I said, it was pretty easy. There was a pretty strong motivation. And the second part was?
What are the main differences? I mean.
Yeah, main differences. There's a lot of talk about this. I think the big main difference is there are more successful startups in Silicon Valley. So there's more good advice. So you can talk to people who have done this before, who have been like somewhat successful, and they will give you like pretty good advice. Versus in a place like this where the successful startups are more sparse, like a lot of the advice you get will be like wrong. So that's the biggest difference. And there's like, and the other big difference is the market is a lot larger in the United States. That makes it easier to start a lot of companies. A lot of people think like the fact that there's more money is the big difference. That's actually not as important as the difference. That's like true, but there's also more competition. There are a lot more startups which are looking like a lot better than you. They know how to pitch. They have like uncles who are hedge fund managers. So like the fact that there's more money doesn't necessarily make it easier for people like us to go there and like raise money.
My question is kind of more technical. How hard it is for a non-US citizen to incorporate the company from scratch before talking to investors over there?
Incorporating is very easy. But going there and being full-time on your product, startup is very hard. So like the problem is like you need a kind of valid visa to be able to stay in the United States. So anybody can incorporate company, like, but you cannot work in that company.
But in that case, I guess you'd have a time limit of 6 months or something before you get a full permit or...
So I mean, in our case, we were working full-time as another company. Like, so okay. For us, that 6 months was more like 3 years, like, or 4 years. But I mean, just so you guys understand, if you want, like, if you start a company in the United States, probably your visa document won't be very, like, it won't be super, like, correct. It will be like there's gonna be like some tricky notes. So it's very clear, like, you cannot start a company as an immigrant in the United States. The laws are pretty clear. It's just that like people also know that more than half of the companies in Silicon Valley are started by immigrants, so they kind of ignore certain things. And then you kind of forget some details in your applications, and it kind of goes like that. Okay. By the way, like, I went to USCIS, like advisory board, and the official advice from them was like, sorry guys, we cannot change these policies. It's really hard to change these policies. This is how we work around our current rules. They actually taught entrepreneurs how to like work around the official policy. So I'm actually ignoring everybody in the back for the questions. Okay, sorry. Like if you want to if you want to ask a question, you may need to kind of move forward. So.
I have two questions. Like Kutay, my name is Kutay. What one thing would you tell yourself if you meet yourself at the beginning of this startup journey?
That's so the biggest mistakes we were doing was kind of obvious in today's talk. So like we didn't start with a few customers, which we were super happy. Instead, we tried to kind of like scale to a lot of subjects, a lot of different things very early on. That wasn't the right way to start. Like we should have started with like kind of like a small niche and a few very good courses and make sure those courses are amazing and then kind of move from there. Instead, like we kind of took the harder path, which was trying to get like hundreds of courses which are kind of average and over time like making them better. Like it worked out, as I said, like you can make mistakes and still be successful. This was one of them. Like we were wrong, it still worked out, but I would do it very differently. And the other big thing, like I would say, is especially like engineers, like don't know the difference between hard and important. Like hard and important are very different things. Like several times we did this mistake. We chose like something because it was hard to do, and we thought it would be successful because it was hard to do, instead of thinking about like what was actually important. And this like for education, like there are a lot of super hard things to do in education, and like people keep trying those. But what really like the world needs from education technology is kind of a consistent like courses teaching different subjects which are relatively affordable and like kind of like boring thing. Like the world needs something which is boring to do in the educator side. But that's actually the most important
All
thing.
right, my second one is I would like to hear very much your term sheet advices.
I mean, term sheet advice is like you get the best you can. So like if you are a hot startup and obviously you have like 5 term sheets from different investors, then you can get the best term sheet. And I can kind of give you like smartest advice about like which one to pick. But in reality, it's all about your options. So if you don't have a lot of options, you kind of have to take whatever you have. But like a few kind of quick things, like valuation is not that important. The control ROIs are super important. So by the way, this is not very important for your early stage funding, for your like seed funding, because seed funding controls are pretty like weak usually. If a seed investor is asking for a super heavy control items, which some kind of angel investment faculties, like groups in Turkey are asking, and whenever like I see that, I'm saying like this is bullshit. Like this investor doesn't know shit. So like just like ignore those investors. You don't even have to negotiate it. But like later stages becomes more important. You will start giving some controls, but the controls are like permanent, but valuation is temporary. So you have to kind of care more about controls than valuations. What we like usually did was kind of ask people about what was the standard terms, and we try to get something which is kind of the average. So we try to like kind of get whatever everybody else was getting. Any more questions? One more. Okay. Question? No question? Good. Awesome. Thank you.